One of the highlights of this year's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is a documentary called Her Fight, His Name, and it's all about the death of a man from a chokehold by a police officer in 2014. Incredible story. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of the film, Brad Bailey. Brad, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Peter, it's great to be here. I so look forward to speaking with you.
Great to talk to you. Now, tell me about the origins of this incredible documentary about such a horrible incident, and the woman that campaigned all about it.
Sure. I was at Columbia University when I had the original idea to. I was in. I did a master's degree in an oral history program, and to me, oral history is the oldest form of storytelling. It is the spoken word and how we have been communicating the spoken word throughout generations and over time. And so, I had wanted to do an oral history of the mothers of the movement. We had been seeing a lot of these stories on news media around the world of high profile incidents of either police or community violence. And I wanted to understand what the ripple effects of those incidents were to the family members who were left behind. And so the Eric Garner story was very well known in 2014 because of his last words, "I can't breathe," which I think ignited a movement worldwide dealing with issues of civil rights, and which of course ended up in the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I wanted to try to find a personal story, though, something that was universal. I wanted to really try to understand how a mother who has dealt with the loss of her son moves on from that in order to not only deal with that grief, but also to fight for, in her sense, justice. And so that's what we were doing. We wanted to do a story that tried to understand what happens when we see these major news events. What happens when the camera goes away, when the cameras go away? What happens when the news story dies down? These families still have to live with this incident. And so my goal was trying to understand that in a particular situation from a very well-known case.
Aha, how interesting to hear that background. So tell me how easy it was to make the film, especially getting Gwen to talk to camera about her experiences and so on.
Sure. Well, Ms. Carr, as you can imagine, is a camera pro. She has done interviews with everyone. And she spoke at the Democratic National Convention in front of millions from a Zoom interview conducted by Joe Biden in her living room. So she's a pro. But this was the first time that she had actually had a camera follow her intimately for a long period of time. But with anything, it comes down to trust. She trusted me, and we built a relationship based on that trust. And we're friends. She is, yes, my documentary subject, but she's also my friend. So I think when you can do that with someone you can trust, when you can build that relationship, that's what matters. That's what really matters. And then you can actually create great things from that process. I believe that the story that someone gives you I believe that a person's story is the most important thing that they could ever give you. What you have, the story of who you are, where you're from, and what made you who you are is critical.
Hmm.
And I think that her giving us that was really one of the greatest gifts I've ever received.
Oh, that's terrific, and she just comes across so well on camera. Did she need much prompting? Did she negotiate with you about what to say, all that sort of thing?
No, no. Everything you saw from that film was organic. Everything that you saw was verite in real time. And that's how we liked it. I also wanted a film, again, that was from an oral history perspective, that had a certain methodology. And so we wanted a film where everything came from her point of view. So there were no outside experts and, there are no outside people weighing in on her. She was the one weighing in on her own experience from her own first person perspective.
Uh-huh. Okay. So it's a 30-minute documentary, but you do incorporate news footage and other sort of footage in the film. Tell me about what you decided to put into the documentary.
Well, we worked for years trying to find ways to be able to integrate different archival resources. And one of the more critical aspects of what we integrated were the photos. Photos play a key aspect to this. Everyone, and I'm sure you have folks in your family like this as well. We have older people in our family who have had photos in their living room. And I didn't really think about it, but there's a real reason people keep photos on their desks or in their living room so they can have these visual reminders of what's key, the people who are key in their lives and who are important to them. And so when we realized that Miss Carr had all these photos from decades in her house, we realized it was a way to be able to help the audience understand how she interprets these photos as a vehicle for memory. They're a vehicle for memory, and how she uses that memory for two purposes: to prevent from going, as she says, to the dark places in her own mind, and then also as a fuel to fight for justice. And so that's what we wanted to do in the film as an oral history piece, as a piece on memory. We wanted to find a way to incorporate memory into the narrative of the film, which, as a filmmaker, is not an easy task to do. But we were lucky that we had her and that we had these years, these years of photos, which served as her archival memory. We
Mm.
had years of that to help us guide through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it works so well. It's just incredible for me to understand how racism obviously fueled this situation and the chokehold and it was in Staten Island and this police officer who decided to use a chokehold that was so deleterious to Eric's life. Were all police officers trained to use that chokehold? Why did he use that in particular?
Well, I think with the mechanics of chokehold, I leave that to the legal experts, of course.
Hmm.
But in this particular situation, it's one of those things where when someone uses force, and especially if someone is an officer of the law, they have a responsibility. And we understand that things can happen, but you have a responsibility. And that has to be taken into account with any of these situations that could end up in any worst case scenario at any time. So I just believe that officers must be judicious. They must use, and even in situations that I know, quick thinking, you have to sometimes think almost immediately. But I think that they need to be a bit more judicious in how they execute the use of force in different situations. Because again, people can lose their lives. So, and I think that they passed the New York chokehold law. Ms. Carr was very, very instrumental in actually finding a law to ban the use of chokeholds in New York State. And I think that's a great thing. I think that we all have to look in our society, in our communities, about better ways to be able to come together in different ways and to be able to like have justice, of course, and deal with issues of crime and all those issues in our communities, but also at the same time realize that if you are in a position of power, you have a responsibility.
Of course, absolutely, and I was just I couldn't believe how long it took for justice to prevail and for the police officer to be, charged with what he did, and for the whole training of police officers to change as well.
Well, again, police, I'm someone who believes in, a strong relationship between the police and the community. And I think there has to be continued dialogue, continued communication. All these things are critical. They are there to serve and protect. And I hope that folks inside communities, especially in inner city communities, can really develop relationships with the enforcement authorities in their district to understand that that is the key aspect to serve and to protect. That's
Mm.
what they're there for. And we have to do a better job in making sure that those key mottos are something that we can live up to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, this is where the Black Lives Matter movement sort of originated, and I'm wondering if the situation today is better.
Well, that's a tough call. I think that awareness has improved. And I think that many police districts and communities across the country have had better ways of making sure that we can try to prevent these situations. But unfortunately, in some situations, they still happen. They still happen. They still happen almost every day. And so it's just something that we as a society will have to continue to push and to continue to have awareness to what. But see, I think that here's something very critical. I don't want my film to just be about one particular, group of people or geography. I want this film to be universal.
Yep.
I want people to realize in, New York State or New Jersey or Australia that this is an issue worldwide. This is an issue all of us need to be aware of. This is an issue all of us need to take accountability for. And I think that this is a worldwide issue because us as humanity need to deal with it. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm talking to you. This is universal. This is global. And my stories I want to be global because they affect, this is about one mother who lost her son. And I want mothers everywhere to understand what she went through. Because if we can all lose our sons or daughters in all different types of ways that we may consider unjust. And I want people to look at her response to this,
Mm.
and to learn from it, and to extrapolate into their own lives. And that to me is what I hope is the global appeal of it. And but it's part of what we did as producers of the film and drafting and sort of trying to shape its message.
Absolutely. That's so well expressed. I fully agree with you. Tell me, for this really tightly constructed 30-minute documentary, you would have shot more material than you actually used in the final version. So tell me about the issues in the editing process.
The editing took a long time in different incarnations because we wanted to get the story right. That's why it took so long. We realized we had a duty and responsibility to Mrs. Carr, not just Mrs. Carr, but to the other mothers who took their time to do this film. And we wanted the film to be almost a procedural. So it could show how one woman sort of lived this normal life beforehand. She drove the A train in New York City. She drove subways in New York City, which is a massive responsibility. But she was thrust into a worldwide spotlight with the death of her son. And I wanted the film to be a procedural where it shows how one woman can affect change locally, at the state level, at the federal level, and then globally. And that's what she did. And so I hope that people can see that and they can extrapolate their own possibility to create change in their own communities and in their own countries, and of course, across the globe.
Absolutely. I say that a lot of these documentaries can be called films as agents of change. Uh,
Yes.
and it's certainly the case. And the film obviously would have been screened in other places. What reactions have you received to the film?
I've always been surprised at the level of intimacy people feel by watching the film, emotional connection that I've seen of people by watching the film. And I've always been moved by that because it is a personal story. It is a labor of love, absolutely, and a labor of love for the other mothers who have participated in the film, and a labor of love for the mothers who did not participate in the film but who are going through this.
Mm.
And so that's what we wanted to do. And I think that sometimes while watching a film, I hope that that came across to people as they watched it. The ingredients we put in, I hope that they took away as they watched the film.
Of course. And Gwen, I gather, has seen the film, and how has she
Yes.
reacted?
Well, it's always tough when you're watching a film about you, even as someone as well known as a media personality as Miss Carr. She's seen the film in different incarnations, but when we finally watched the final version, it wasn't it wasn't her that said anything. It was the the person who knows her well, who was sitting next to her, and said to me, and this was the greatest compliment even. Miss Carr was quiet, but you could see that the person speaking spoke for everyone in the room. And I definitely don't want to speak for Miss Carr, but the person next to her said, that is her life. You have showed her life. And so that is what I feel thankful for.
Well, well done on that because it tells such a great story. Brad, I just wanted to ask you, how do you decide what films you make and what else is in your filmography?
Well, I work on films that show real people. Sometimes they're well known, sometimes they're not, who can overcome great obstacles and who can stand up for individuals who need to be stood up for. You know, I never believe in the term voice for the voiceless because I believe everyone has a voice. But I do believe that that voice can be augmented. I do believe that the voice can be that I do believe that a spotlight can be shown on that voice. And I did a film about a very extraordinary individual by the name of Hale Zukas, who was essentially considered the godfather of the disability movement. He had cerebral palsy. He couldn't use anything below his neck, but he had a letterboard and a helmet and a headstick attached to it, and he typed out letters. And by typing out those letters, he literally helped change the infrastructure of how we consider the world for people with disabilities. So everything from curb cuts to ramps, anywhere you see in the world, was literally a derivative result of the work he and others did by founding the first disability group in the world in Berkeley, California in the 1970s. And so stories like that, stories that show heroes, that show people who, by either accident or birth or circumstance, have ended up shifting and changing the world.
Uh-huh. Oh, how interesting to hear all that. Are you working on a project at the moment?
Yes, yes. And we're finishing a project about a well-known filmmaker in San Francisco, who also showed a spotlight on some of the challenges of folks who lived in the 1980s. So we're finishing that now. And yeah, so it's one of those things again where I want to continue showing my light on the beautiful, inspiring people that have been born on this wonderful planet and who continue to help make it a better place, who try
Oh,
to make it a better place, and
yeah.
not just for them, for those around.
Oh, excellent. Who is that filmmaker?
Well, we're still trying. We're
Oh,
still coming into the last bit part of it.
okay.
But his name is Marlon Riggs. His name is Marlon Riggs. So it's something that we're still working on, but
Ah,
it's something that I think would be hopefully a way to shine a spotlight on some of the some of the people again who have moved through history and who have shaped it.
oh, excellent. Look forward to seeing that eventually when it's when it's completed. Brad, it's
Thank
it's
you.
it's been such a pleasure talking to you. We've been speaking to Brad Bailey, who is the director of Her Fight, His Name, screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. Brad, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Been a pleasure talking to you too, Peter. Thank you so much. And again, I love the folks down in Australia. You know, I always love visiting, and I think that and I look forward and hope to hearing some of their responses when they watch the film.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll get feedback. Thanks again. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.